Back in the day of 2006, when all this attention was put on Pluto, the general public went crazy with it. Never before had I seen such an emotional response to a celestial body. And being a little bit of the brat I was, I'd ask people, what's your favorite planet? And they'd be, oh, Pluto. And normally if someone has a favorite thing, they tend to know all kinds of things about that. So I would quiz people. Say, oh, Pluto's your favorite planet, and how big is Pluto relative to, something on Earth? How many moons does Pluto have? And it would just strike me how little people actually knew about Pluto. So that you can be smarticle about this dwarf planet, Russia has a larger surface area than Pluto. Here's a relative size of Pluto and its major moon of Charon, major meaning the largest, as Pluto really has 5 moons. Some people would know that Pluto had 1 moon, and of course when I was asking this question it had 3 moons. And more recent discoveries, we have 5 moons for Pluto. There's nice space telescope images of these 5 moons. One of the great things about the New Horizons project was the focus it was able to take on Pluto. So the goal of the New Horizons Space Telescope was to fly into the Kuiper Belt and gather lots of data about the Kuiper Belt. Now, since I knew it was going to take, as you can see, launch in 2006, get to Pluto in 2015, because I knew it's a 9-year mission, let's really focus on getting the closest image that we possibly can of Pluto as we make our way to the Kuiper Belt. So this is the New Horizons spacecraft. Something that is a bit of a tradition at NASA these days is to include the Florida Quarter somewhere within the spacecraft. The Florida Quarter is featured not just because primarily the launches are from Cape Canaveral in Florida, but also because the state quarter of Florida is themed around the gateway to discovery to exploration. A piece of the historic Spaceship One was on the Kepler spacecraft. Spaceship One is the first commercial spacecraft to reach it to space and back. And the interned remains of Clyde Tombaugh. Some of his ashes were included on the flight, so he was able to get as close as he would ever have dreamed of getting to Pluto, possibly. Another little memento on the spacecraft was this 1991 stamp of Pluto where it says Pluto not yet explored. And New Horizons was the fastest spacecraft ever launched. You'll see the relative speed of a 747 compared to one of the world's absolute fastest airplanes, the SR-71 Blackbird, traveling 3.5 times the speed of sound, and this is how fast New Horizons would zip by. And there's no one better than Dr. Stern, the lead of the New Horizons project, to walk you through some of the highlights. This is a presentation he gave at a university in Utah, and I've taken and put 4 little clips together. And he'll talk about why they had to launch at the time they did and had such a short period of time to make this happen, and then some of the data of how quickly New Horizons traveled through our solar system and the pinpoint accuracy the engineers had for this very, very, very gut-wrenching 10-year or so mission. So, Dr. Stern.
We had to launch this spacecraft in January of 2006 because that was the last opportunity in the entire decade and all the way out into the middle of the next decade, around 2015, to get a Jupiter gravity assist to fly fast across the solar system. 8 minutes after it left that launch pad, it was in orbit going 18,000 miles an hour. We flew halfway around the Earth and over the Middle East, reignited the second stage to take us out of Earth orbit, and then the third stage accelerated the spacecraft at 14 Gs. Really, no human could survive that. And by the time the third stage burned out, the spacecraft was traveling so fast, as you heard earlier, it became the fastest spacecraft ever launched. We travel almost 1 million miles every day, 7 days a week and 52 weeks a year. For comparison, when Apollo missions launched to the moon, at 25,000 miles an hour, it took those astronauts 3 days to reach the moon. New Horizons crossed the orbit of the moon 9 hours after launch. First launched from the Earth, we flew to that Jupiter gravity assist flyby. It took us 13 months to get to Jupiter. The mission before us had taken 4.5 years to get to Jupiter. The one before that took 6 years to get to Jupiter. So we were really going lickety-split. And Jupiter was not just our gravity flyby to add almost 5,000 miles per hour to our speed, but it was the only thing we passed along the way. And so it was our flight test. It was our opportunity to make sure that if there were going to be any bugs in any of the software or the operation of the systems or the instruments, that we could work it out at Jupiter so that it would work flawlessly at Pluto 8 years later. And all of that did work. Completely flawless flyby. We proved all of our systems and all of our software and conducted over 700 scientific observations of Jupiter and its satellites. This is a picture made in color by New Horizons of Jupiter and its volcanic moon Io. And then after we left Jupiter, we flew on across all the giant planets of our solar system over 8 years. Basically the entire 2-term Obama administration, we were out crossing the solar system on our way to Pluto. This is a very nice little graphic that makes it look like we missed. I promise you we did not miss. As 2015 dawned, we took the spacecraft out of hibernation for the last time. And I just want to talk a minute for the nerds in the audience, the engineering and science majors. In order for the science to work out, we had to carefully target our flyby. So we had to arrive at a very specific point in space to within just a few tens of miles after a journey of 3 billion miles. Really, really astounding. And somebody did the arithmetic, and I checked it, and it's right. It's the equivalent of hitting a golf ball in LA and sinking a hole-in-one in New York City in terms of targeting. And in addition, because the spacecraft was counting in its computer on knowing where Pluto and all of its satellites were in space as it passed by, we also had to arrive in a very narrow timing window of plus or minus 450 seconds, which is 9 minutes. Plus or minus 9 minutes after 9.5 years. I will tell you that I flew from Denver to Salt Lake yesterday, and the airline I flew on could not meet that criteria. But we arrived at Pluto 86 seconds off target after 9.5 years, and I'm proud to say we were early. Thank you.
What a stunningly fantastic piece of engineering for humanity. NASA's mission to the Pluto Kuiper Belt mission, the New Horizons spacecraft. So before 2015, where Pluto came to its closest approach to Pluto, this is the evolution of our imagery of Pluto up until this point. What would we see on this wonderful 14th of July? You might want to ask yourself, where were you on this day? To help you, in the western U.S., there's about 5 a.m. in the morning, so you're probably asleep. The world was anticipating what would Pluto's selfie look like. I was watching on my iPad and taking these screenshots. Of course, they had coverage, and then the computer simulation here would count the miles up as to how far to Pluto and how fast this thing was flying, 30,000, nearly 31,000 miles per hour, and then they count down to when it was going to be there. It's very exciting times. Then, of course, the lead administrator for science missions, lots of questions being asked of him throughout the morning and after. This is astronaut Scott Kelly. He was the absolute closest to Pluto at this time, as he was aboard the International Space Station when the New Horizons spacecraft was approaching Pluto. Here's the 5:55 seconds, and if you look closely right here, this is the Tombaugh family. They were invited to this celebration in New York, and here's Dr. Alan Stern that you just saw in that presentation. And Bill Nye was on hand to witness the event. This badge that he's wearing, or this pin rather, this is featured in part on the cover of your notebook, the Planetary Society. And we'll show you Here is the rendering. I morphed the Planetary Society image with the Carl Sagan Institute logo, as it was Carl Sagan and pals that started the Planetary Society, and we'll show you a very short clip on how Bill Nye became associated with the Planetary Society.
I took astronomy from Carl Sagan. His classes were just fantastic. If you saw the series Cosmos, the original Cosmos, his lectures were like those television shows. He would bring these pictures from the Jet Propulsion Lab you'd never seen before, from Mars. These would be on slides. Technology using translucent images with light projected through them, in focus. At my 10th reunion, I met with him for a few moments, and I said, I want to do this show about science for kids. He said, focus on pure science. Kids resonate to pure science. That was his verb, resonate. So the Science Guy show has a little bit about bridges and dams and civil engineering works and gears, but it's mostly about science.
Now the currents set up by warm and salty water sinking and rising in the ocean are called thermohaline currents.
The Planetary Society, empowering the world's citizens to advance planetary science and exploration, was started by Carl Sagan. I became a member back in 1980, and I've been a member ever since. Then when Carl Sagan died, I was asked to speak at his memorial. Then after that, I got on the board of directors. Then I left the room or something, and I became vice president. And then 3 years ago, it was a dinner party, there was wine or something, and now I'm the CEO. I'm the head guy of the Planetary Society, so Carl Sagan is deep within me. I am part of his legacy. And what he emphasized to everybody was the process of science. This is how we know nature. It's the best idea humans have ever come up with.
And once the flyby occurred, you of course are going to have to wait a long time for the data to be transmitted back to Earth. So this was the time for the Planetary New Horizons team to get some well-needed rest. They'd been up for days. Disney had donated some plush toys. You might see Pluto featured right there. And after about 8 hours of a very anxious wait, this was the first photo of Pluto from the New Horizons mission. And of course, social media lit up with images like this. Pluto was in Pluto. Another rendering. Different perspective. I heart Pluto. People were very locked into the heart on the image of Pluto. The Postal Service issued a new stamp in honor of the New Horizons success. These were some of those that you could purchase. Pluto Now Explored instead of the Pluto Not Yet Explored. You have to love this image of Dr. Stern and his team crossing out the not yet. They had, in fact, explored Pluto. And this is the Tombaugh family over here in the back. And the achievement earned a Guinness Book of World Records record. It was the farthest that a postage stamp had ever traveled. And just to clarify, you didn't actually need to pay postage on this spacecraft to fly. You put eyes on something and suddenly people are emotionally attached. One more time for you. Excitement for the approach of New Horizons. Yay! Oh, a flyby. Very sad. Have a heart. Visit Pluto. And here is a nice look at our photographic evolution of Pluto. This image right here is showing the surprise of mountainous areas on Pluto. And these mountains, you'll notice some of them 10,000 feet high. So planetary geologists very excited to explore that in greater detail. At a resolution of 850 meters per pixel, it's the absolute best image of Pluto we've ever seen. The heart area is a large ocean, and a glaciologist was pulled into the New Horizons team that had been accounted for originally. And while you're there, definitely need to take a look at Pluto's largest moon of Charon. So, new updated image for you, the relative size of Pluto and Charon against the backdrop of the North American continent. About the size of an entire continent, if you think of it as compared to Australia. And the New Horizons poster celebrating the achievement of the team. Here's really to put the team's efforts in perspective. In 1980, Pluto and Charon were the only objects known beyond Neptune in our solar system. In 2015, more than 1,600 are known. That's just amazing, and many, couple thousand more since. This former planet of Ceres, now a dwarf planet, and also one time the largest asteroid in the asteroid belt. So Ceres has kind of gone up and down in the classification system. And let's have a little laugh with Ceres here. So Ceres is about the size of Texas, or if you know any Texans, they think it's planet size, because that is indeed how Texans view the world. Here is a satellite that collected data on Ceres. And here's the wonderful advertisement, the Queen of the Asteroid Belt, last chance for water until Jupiter. And the little fun I mentioned. Dear Pluto, listen, I was a planet 130 years before you were discovered, and you don't see me. Here's the little humor I alluded to earlier. Dear Pluto, listen, I was a planet 130 years before you were discovered, and they demoted me to an asteroid, but you don't see me being a whiny little brat about it. Sincerely, Ceres, the dwarf planet formerly known as Asteroid 1. NDT likes to pipe in on social media, and he discovered this Pluto rap a group of grade school kids made. He said, I couldn't have said it better myself. Well, when you get that kind of endorsement from NDT, we got to check out the Pluto rap.
Pandemonium here at Kip Hartwood Academy, where the 5th graders are having a great debate. Is Pluto a planet or isn't it?
You're a Pluto fan? Well, I'm sorry, y'all. Since the 30s, Pluto's been an oddball. Check its orbit out. Way elliptical, kinda tilted to when trying to be critical. Until Neptune is gonna get crossed soon. Staring at Charon, pretty big for a moon.
Well, I think it's great. Why you gotta hate? Going around the sun, having fun like the other 8. Pluto's still a planet if I desire. It's big, it's round, and it's not on fire. Planet means whatever we mean when we mean it. If it's big, it's round, we know it when we see it.
Huh, what an interesting theory. You ever heard of this planet called Ceres? Thought we had a new planet, 1801. Found more and more stuff, but it was no fun for the kids to memorize all the planets in the sky with the never-ending list piling up sky high. Too many planets, people got annoyed. So now, we just call them asteroids.
Ceres, whatever, what's your point meant to be?
Pluto is the Ceres of the 21st century.
I'm not buying it, man, I'm not budging. Pluto's a planet, I know it cause I love it.
Planet not pseudo, you already knew though. Dwarf planet now, hate to break it to you Pluto, and it's very far away, far away, far away. It's tiny, it's icy, and its orbit's kinda cray, but it's rule number 3 that it just doesn't obey. A bunch of Kuiper stuff is in its way. Dwarf planet, what's up? With new scopes there was a typhoon of new objects found past Neptune. Pluto was still the big daddy until they found Eris, just a little more fatty.
So, was that planet number 10?
Nope, cause I would just extend the future planet list up higher and higher.
Well, they're big, they're round, they're not on fire.
But think about Ceres, same sort of story. Pluto's one of many new dwarf planets.
Sorry, but a dwarf planet's still a planet, right?
Nope, cause in that belt of Kuiper, it's just way too crowded. 70k rocks, floating all around it.
Man, sometimes I hate science.
We got 4 terrestrials and 4 gas giants and 2 belts, asteroid and Kuiper, y'all. So it's not a planet, but it's not an oddball, and the universe is an incredible place.
Mean, very evil man just shutting up nature.
A planet not pseudo, you already knew though. Dwarf planet now, hate to break it to you, Pluto, and it's very far away, far away, far away. It's tiny, it's icy, and its orbit's kinda cray, but it's rule number 3 that it just doesn't obey. A bunch of Kuiper stuff is in its way. Dwarf planet, what's
A
up?
planet on pseudo, you already knew though. Dwarf planet now, but it's still kinda cool though. It's very far away, far away, far away. Though it's tiny, it's icy, and its orbit kinda cray. Learning more about the universe every single day. We'll keep on learning till we're old and gray. Dwarf planet, what's up?
Incredible arguments made here today.
Dwarf
Luckily,
planet, what's
the
up?
new Horizons satellite is on its way to take photos of Pluto for the first
Dwarf
time.
planet, what's
Stay
up?
tuned until 2015. Signing out.
Dwarf planet, what's up?
Obviously, that clip was made before 2015, and the New Horizons team got wind of that, and they invited the class to come to the New Horizons show in New York, where I showed you the Tombaugh family was. I don't know if any of them went, but pretty awesome nonetheless. So thanks to New Horizons, we have a much sharper look at our dwarf planet Pluto.